guys, Jonny Stofko here. Welcome to Ungoogleable. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming adventures that we have in store for you. But for now, enjoy the show.
What is it that I give a fuck about today?
On the first podcast I hosted, I ended it and said, hey man, if you're ever in Sydney, and at the time I think this one might have just been, I don't know if it was an idea, I don't know if it had manifested yet, but I said, if that does come out and you come to Sydney, hit me up.
Yeah.
So I was on Facebook, and a lot of people talk trash about the algorithm, but because of the algorithm, it popped up on my feed that you were coming.
Yeah.
So I hit you up, and voila, here we are. Yeah, man. When did you get into Sydney?
No, I came to Australia like 10 days ago.
Okay. Yeah, because last year you did ZeroCon, and yeah. So I wanted to actually start there because my girlfriend's an accountant for one of these big companies.
Yeah.
And it's like, she saw you speak there.
Yeah.
And she works in a male-driven industry, one of the only female bosses in her whole company. They've been around for like 45 years. Mm-hmm. She said that you told a story there about running. You said, are people who run marathon by choice?
Sure.
And so she said that it really resonated with her, and she used it. She tried using it in a business meeting.
Yeah.
And they really didn't get it. They didn't understand.
They're
so
like, what the hell are you talking about?
So I wanted to ask you, because she probably couldn't. She just told me this. She probably couldn't. What was that about? Is it in this one?
It's in Subtle Art.
I thought it was. Oh, it's in this one.
It's mentioned in Subtle Art.
Yeah.
So the whole story is like, imagine running a marathon, right?
Mm.
So imagine two scenarios. First scenario is you're like kidnapped by a bunch of gangsters, and they put a gun to your head, and they're like, you have to run a marathon tomorrow or we're gonna kill your entire family. That experience would be one of the most upsetting, traumatic, painful, anxiety-ridden experiences of your life. Now imagine that you set a goal there's a marathon in 6 months. You set a goal, I want to run a marathon, it's a life goal of mine. I'm gonna train really hard, I'm gonna get my nutrition in order, I'm gonna get up at 5 a.m. every day. And then you show up, you run the marathon, your family comes out, all your best friends come out, they're all cheering for you, they're waiting for you at the finish line. That actually ends up being one of the most proud moments of your life. Like this extreme high of like accomplishing a major life goal. And what I point out is that the actual physical action of running the marathon is exactly the same. The only thing that's different between those two scenarios is the context, is the meaning that we place on the marathon. So a marathon could be like the most traumatic experience of your life, or it can be the most powerful experience of your life. And it all depends on what meaning you put on it. And what I talk about in the book is that it all depends on, so much of it hinges on this belief that you chose to do it.
The choice.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on sort of, you're from Boston, right?
I went to school in Boston.
You went to school in Boston.
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up? Like those adolescent years where 14-year-olds are the biggest dicks and you're getting bullied. Where'd you spend those years at?
Texas.
Okay. So my years were spent in Ohio.
Yeah.
And I have a group of friends. There's 4 of us. I'm 37 now. We've been friends since we were 12.
Yeah.
Travel together once a year. As we get older, we're actually having better conversations.
Sure.
We're educated now, I guess. But
mature.
Yeah, mature now. And the thing that's interesting to me that I want to ask you about, what's your belief on it, is the social construct aspect. Depending, say you come from, I don't know what town in Texas, but I come from an old steel town. It's run down, a lot of crime. One of these places where the average household income is $22,000 a year. Now, it's also one of those towns where we come from this town, we don't ever leave, and they kind of use it as a crutch to kind of shadow the fact that they're not happy.
Yeah.
And the older I get, I think that is an example, like it's not the person. Mm-hmm. It's almost like if they don't have the tool or the tools or the teachers or guidance to see that that's just a construct, that's not who they are, they then have the opportunity to do whatever they want. Yeah. Like the town you come from, is it one of those towns? Did you grow up with sort of opportunity? Did you have to create the opportunity? Did you ever doubt yourself?
I grew up in a pretty nice suburb outside of Austin. But it's funny because Texas very much has that cultural thing Texans have like an irrational pride about being Texan.
For sure.
You know,
there's belt buckles about Texas.
Exactly. Like there's I now that I've lived outside of Texas for 20 years, when I go back, I find it so strange that they're like, oh, came back to the best place in the world. You know, I'm like, what?
It's tribalism at its finest.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a culture in Texas of it's very conformist. It's there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of kind of like Southern U.S. heritage and things like that. And I never fit into that. In fact, I was always the obnoxious kid questioning it, saying like, well, why does it have to be done that way? Why do we have to like, why do sports matter? Why do we have to go to church? Why do we have to, get together and do a barbecue? Like, you don't have to do all these things this way. And I mean, as an adolescent, I was socially punished for it. But I think kind of the point you're driving at is that oftentimes we don't realize we have a choice. So it's like people stuck in your hometown. It's like a burnt out steel town, no jobs, whatever. It's like in their mind, they're probably like, well, this is home. It's not my fault that, there are no jobs around. Where it's like, well, you do have a choice. You can get up and move somewhere. You can go do something else. But oftentimes we're so confined to our own culture and our own expectations that we don't even realize that we have that choice.
How long did it take you? Because I could relate definitely when I was younger, all boys Catholic school, raising my hand in the second grade about why do I have to confess sins to a man? Like, because they're telling us God is everywhere, rather than God is dead. But God is everywhere. And it took, for the longest time, I felt like I was a bad person when I was a kid because I was questioning. And it took me literally into my late 20s to realize that that's actually something I could use for progress.
Yeah.
And I'm under the impression some people may never have that realization. It might never click. How old were you when you realized that contrarian approach was going to be able to serve you in the future as an adult?
I think when I moved to Boston, like I always tell my...
Kenny Loggins wrote a song about this. Please come to Boston. Yeah, it was Kenny Loggins. Yeah, for sure.
I've told my parents before. I said moving to Boston was like the best thing I did because I was contrarian, because I questioned things. I always felt socially punished for that where I grew up. And then I went to Boston, and I was suddenly in an environment that encouraged that questioning, encouraged that challenging of culture and ideas and traditions. So as soon as I went there, I was socially rewarded for my behavior. And it completely changed because I had a very similar thing to you, that I was like, all right, well, I guess people don't like me. I guess that I'm not very good at anything. I'm not lovable. Like, I had all these kind of ingrained shame and beliefs because I had been, pushed into lockers for so many years. Mm-hmm. And so when I moved, there was a very slow undoing of that, of like, oh shit, I am smart. I do have good ideas. Like, I am good at certain things, Yeah. One thing that comes up a lot when I do interviews is like, I didn't even know I was a good writer until I was 26.
How did you find out? Did somebody tell you, or you knew?
Because I put shit online and
the blog,
and it got shared like thousands and thousands of times,
on that, sorry to cut you off, I love that your Instagram handle is still markmanson.net. But initially when I first, started reading your work a couple years ago, I thought it's the same contrarian thing. I initially saw, why isn't he just using Mark Manson?
Yeah.
Like, why is he, but that's still driving people. It's your approach. Like, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
But
it's funny you bring that up because I'm trying to buy the handle Mark Manson right now.
Did somebody block it?
Yeah, well, somebody got it before me, and see, this is the problem of too much success. Is that as soon as you're a big best-selling author, like people
want to come at you.
Well, and they want a lot of money for it.
For sure.
So I've been like kind of hemming and hawing the last year of like, do I really want to pay a bunch of money?
Hold on. So some dude who has Mark Manson on that handle knows that you, Mark Manson, want it, and he's trying to exploit the fame?
His name is Mark Manson.
Does he use it? Like, is he using it?
A little
It should be judged by like a content judicial system. Like, that's probably the future of where we're going. We were talking about in the elevator. It's like people talk about, I didn't see Twitter coming. I didn't see YouTube coming in like 2006. social media is here.
Yeah.
What's that next step? Like, where's the leap?
Honestly, like, I mean, there haven't really been any big new networks lately, but I remember.
Do you think it's going to be a network, like, in that space?
Well, I don't know, but it's just I know that like a few years ago, I told my assistant, I'm like, anything you find that might ever be anything, like, sign up with my name because I hate being in this situation where it's like 6 years later, I'm like sending like offers to like buy my own name for stuff.
Yeah.
Do
you still find yourself, because I always kind of feel empathetic to the generation who only knows social media, who only knows looking in their phone book for a number, when we used to have to memorize numbers.
Yeah, right.
It's actually a fear of mine. If I go to jail and I get one call, I don't have anyone to call.
You don't know.
Back in the day, I'd have like a whole list.
Yeah.
So my point was on that. What was I talking about? I was talking about the knowledge.
Sympathizing with social media.
So the generation who are only now comparing themselves to likes, shares, followers, and they're putting their self-worth on this, and you're starting to see these very sad sort of like suicide rates in young people going through the roof. And it kind of, I sit back and I try to empathize and think, what were my struggles at 13? What were my struggles at 14? And they're totally different to the 13 or 14-year-old now.
Yeah. Well, I think in many ways, so I think what social media has done is it's taken those classic teenage struggles of like, I want, because when you're 13, 14, you are obsessed with what your peers think of you.
For sure.
Everybody's completely obsessed with like who your friend group is, whether you're cool or not, whether the girl likes you. And I think what social media does is it just amplifies that to the nth degree. And so if you take any of the insecurities that you and I felt when we were adolescents, it's like multiply that by 5. That's what a kid sitting on Snapchat all day today feels like. And I think that messes, your brain's still very much developing at that age. And so I think it can definitely mess with some kids. I actually heard just this morning that here in Australia they passed, they're not going to show likes on Instagram anymore.
Yeah, it started 7 days ago.
Yeah.
I think Canada may have been the first trial nation, and then Australia. And I wanted to bring it up. I wanted to talk to you about that, is the social media platform trying to use that kind of experiment as a fix, or are they trying to use that as kind of things to come? Or what's your opinion on them even doing that?
I think it's a test, because I the real danger with social media is that it's those little dopamine spikes.
For sure.
It's like when you post something and you get those notifications of like such and such liked it, such and such like
he's following me. Yeah. She's following me.
And you get that high, and it's just human biology. Like you get addicted to it, and then you start if you don't get those likes, you start freaking out and feeling bad about yourself. And so I think what this new policy is trying to do is just to nip that in the bud, to kind of like short circuit that. Like, okay, we're going to try to limit the dopamine hits that you're getting from these platforms, so that hopefully people will move towards using them in a more authentic way.
I want to hear your rebuttal to this, because obviously you're the type of guy who you have people around you who care about you.
Yeah.
You were loved as a child, and what is your narrative now when maybe your mom or your second grade teacher asks you about just a word? Because I guess my real question, the word, fucked or fuck, it's a noise that comes out of our feeding tube basically, and people hear it. But I think, because I know when this first one came out, we talked about that for about 10 minutes. About the title was something else before this, and then when you wanted to really push this one, somebody might have said, no, it'll never work. And I never forgot that, because I look at conversation, it's like, well, somebody who would judge a word or a noise out of our mouth isn't listening to the conversation. They're not listening to the intention. They're just hearing the word, and they're having a reaction to like a predisposed condition way to act for that one word. Do you have to deal with a lot of that?
Well, what's interesting is that, so profanity is, first of all, it's very arbitrary. So like take the word fuck. Like fuck wasn't considered like a dirty word until maybe like 50, 60 years ago.
What's the etymology of the word fuck?
I
wonder what
I have no idea. Man.
I'm surprised Ron Burgundy didn't have that in Anchorman. Like the root word of it, how did it come out?
I don't know.
But
like,
investigate that.
It's funny because if you look up like what was considered vulgar, say in the 1800s or the 1700s, it sounds absolutely ridiculous now. Like I'm like the word occupy was apparently the most offensive word you could say in like Victoria, England or
What
something.
was it? Occupy?
Yeah, occupy. And so profanity evolves, and it kind of represents social, like our cultural values. So I think words like fuck, they became inappropriate because, I mean, if you think about all like the curse words we grew up with, they all have to do with sex, you know, because sex was the big shameful thing in the previous generations.
And what
now,
year were you born?
84.
Okay. Yeah, go on.
But like today, if you think about the most offensive things you can say, they're racist or sexist.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it's those racist words were completely fine in the 50s and 60s. You know, so there's profanity evolves along with culture, and I think what's interesting about the book titles is like when we proposed Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, there was a lot of very serious conversation with my publisher about whether we were going to use that title, what the repercussions of that title were going to be. And jump ahead now to today, not only was it a good decision, but there's like 20 books with fuck in the title now.
Man, I love when you post pictures or little videos of other countries of like the translations.
Yeah.
But on the contrary to that, then you'll see like Jason Smith's new book that's self-published Amazon.
Yeah.
It's called The Subtle Art of Giving a Fuck. And he removes one word. Where does the flattery and then where does the kind of confusion lie with you when that happens? Because you see it a lot now.
You know, it's one of those things like I laugh.
Just grateful, kind of?
I mean, I laugh because there's not really anything else you can do.
Do you think they're going to make it? Like, I'm always thinking, what's going through that person's head? You want to be just like this person and you think that he did it that way, you could do it that way. When has that ever worked?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think my blogging career prepared me for this because I got ripped off time and time again throughout my blogging career, and I would get upset and I would see that it's like, wait, if you're somebody who needs to rip off somebody else's content to like make a buck, I don't ever have to worry about you, you know? Like you're always going to be chasing me, whatever I do. I remember early in my career, actually, I got really upset. Like a guy ripped off some of my blog content. I got really upset, and I was talking to my dad. And my dad's a really successful entrepreneur, businessman. And he told me, he said, you know, Mark, there are two types of people in this world. There are people who spend all their time and energy looking for golden eggs. And then there are people who just learn how to lay golden eggs. And he said, if you learn how to lay a golden egg, you don't ever have to worry about somebody stealing your golden egg from you. And like for me, that was like super profound because I was like, wow, if I'm more creative and more thoughtful and more forward thinking than the next guy, then yeah, he can rip me off all he wants because I'm already doing the next thing.
Yeah,
you know?
it's one of my favorite quotes of all time is by Terrence McKenna.
Yeah.
He in Food of the Gods, he has a quote that says, "Our duty as humans is to create culture, not consume culture."
Yeah.
And so it's
I like that.
I like that. It's one that really, because he wrote that in I think 87.
Wow.
And the consuming I can only imagine what that quote would have evolved if he was still alive to see where we are. Mark, if this book was titled, you know, a nihilist, now that might even be too fancy, a nihilistic approach to happiness. If this book was titled Your Happiness Guide by Mark Manson, does it sell like it sells with that? In your opinion?
Probably not.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And then was this written after this, or was this one book that you cut?
This was written after.
After?
Yeah.
Two different publishers?
No.
Okay.
Well, down here it's two different publishers.
Okay.
But that's a boring conversation.
For
the listeners.
well, you never know. So when last night was what? Do you watch boxing?
No.
Okay, cool. So, but Manny Pacquiao fought last night. He's 41 years old. You could say all the accolades that he has next to his name, and he's successful in so many other areas. And he won again. And I'm just thinking, why is he doing this? Like, this dude has nothing to prove. He's not washed up. It's not like he's losing fights. He doesn't need the money. And it can relate to anyone who's successful or has seen success in that creative sort of type. The question to some of it revolves on your motivations and inspiration. Where are you pulling from, especially the creative side? Because now you got some pressure on you, big dog. You got you've done it once. You've done it twice.
Yeah.
Do you feel that that's pressure, or do you feel is it like a challenge?
I felt tons
or a duty.
I felt tons of pressure after this one. Tons of pressure. And it was funny because I think I went through what you just said about Pacquiao. You know, it's like I feel like I went through that period. Because basically, once this blew up, I'm like, it was ridiculous because I'm sitting at home. I'm like playing Zelda all day. And I'm like, well, I could spend the week promoting my book and make a shitload of money, or I could wake up at 11 and play Zelda all day and make a shitload of money, you know? So obviously Zelda won. And I did that for months. And I started to have this crisis of like, well, shit, like, why do I write? Like, how do I follow this up? Like, should I follow it up? Like, I don't really need to work if I don't want to. And so it called into question all of these, you know, where is my motivation coming from? What drives what I want to do? Like, what are my real goals past just professional success and, you know, whatever. And it was hard. It messed with me, you know? And I think ultimately the conclusion I came to, which it sounds like is probably the same conclusion Pacquiao came to, is that if I'm not writing, I don't know what to do with myself. Like, at the end of the day, I need to write just because that's the only time I feel like I'm doing something useful and important. If I'm not writing, if I'm not working, I just sit around and become a slob, and I don't like that.
Now, is that your ego, or is that like a duty of care because you know you got skills and people could benefit, or is that more of like a productivity, you feel like crap if you're not writing?
I think it's a deeper purpose-driven thing. I think the ego is... So the ego choice would just be do subtle art, not giving a fuck for kids, subtle art, not giving a fuck for teens, and just fucking
you could go
cash
ethnicity.
just cash checks,
cultural,
just
or
fucking
the Italians.
For Italian, yeah, just like and just fucking cash checks for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, like that would be the ego move, and I knew I didn't want to do that, but it really did force me to question to the core, like, why do I write? What do I want for my career, for my life? And I just realized that it's like if I'm not working on something, working on something makes me happy. You know, probably the same way like Pacquiao, training makes him happy, and he needs something to train for, so he books another fight. You know,
the good thing for you, you'll be able to write, and you know, as long as you're alive.
Yeah.
So Mark Manson, man, the show is called Ungoogleable, and the reason why I named the show that is because I feel it's my own personal philosophy that we live in a culture that's really quick to search externally for everything. Microwave culture. Put it in the microwave,
Hit
you
the
know,
button,
magic pill,
yeah.
lose weight in 4 hours sort of thing. So I wanted to ask you, maybe share something with people listening to this or watching this that you've never shared before, or something that maybe people don't know about you. Maybe you could keep it under the creative realm. Something that maybe you're never brave enough to share, like you like hip-hop dancing, I don't know, something like that. Ungoogleable. Give us something.
I'm a huge death metal fan.
Yeah?
Like really obscure, angry, heavy metal music.
Yeah. Like how dark?
Like as dark
Like
as it
anal
gets.
dark? Have you heard of that band?
As dark as it gets.
Okay. I'm actually going to a concert tonight, and it's not heavy metal.
Really?
It's like the Lumineers, far from
It's
Slipknot.
quite far from.
Yeah, dude. I'm a hippie singing a little banjo. But man, dude, I know your time is fleeting. I want to say thank you for sharing space here. And I know you're in town. You're doing an Australian thing. Is there anything you want to, let people know listening or watching this where you're either going to be performing at, speaking at, where they can pick up your books at before I let you go?
I'm going to be doing a couple tour dates in the UK next week. And then just check out the new book. Everything is Fucked. Book about hope. Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. Check it out. It's everywhere right now. And if you never read the first one, check out Subtle Art, Not Giving a Fuck. That's it, man.
Oh, man,
it's great to meet you.
You as well, Mark.
Yeah,
Be
man.
good.
Thank you.